But yeah, I think that's everything from me. So pop it on to speak of you, and I'll hand over to Rob.
No, actually, we're swapping it around today. So
Steve.
I'm beginning today just to keep you all on your toes. So, but unfortunately, I've also got control of the slides once more.
May or may not be a good thing.
No. This is the second attempt, so hopefully I'll be better. But excellent. So no, indeed, thank you. So if you have decided to turn up for the webinar called "How to Effectively Talk to Your Customers Before They're Ready to Buy," you're in the right place, because that's what we're going to talk about. And we're going to show you why this is absolutely a critical component of modern selling. And those of you that joined us yesterday or listen back to the webinar on the Chambers YouTube channel will recognize why we talk about this being incredibly important. We recognize that a buyer's buying journey begins much earlier than we probably realized as sellers, and therefore communicating to them effectively before they communicate or reach out to us is the art of modern selling. And we'll explain much more about why we say this and how we come to share this with you through this webinar. We're also going to give you an example, a real example, and Rob is going to take you through one of the exercises that we run in our training program, Plan, Grow, Do, which is available online, it's available in classrooms, and it's also available via online live, via Zoom. And we'll talk a bit about that towards the end. So you're in the right place. That's good news. So let me just introduce ourselves, and I'll let Rob just jump in a moment. So those that don't know me, I'm Steve, and I've been in sales for quite a little while. I was reflecting on just how little a while that is when I think about this session specifically and how we use digital platforms to communicate with customers before they're ready to buy. I actually started selling before the internet existed, and before mobile phones were invented. So you could often see me driving around looking for a phone box with 2p pieces in my car, dialing the office to find out if anybody wanted to speak to me. And it just so happened that if they did, I might be back in that area in 3 weeks' time, so we could make an appointment. Wow, how selling has changed. So what you get with me from a sales trainer and a sales professional is somebody that's been there from chalkboards through to digital sales platforms. And you can see in my short bio that I've helped big companies. I've worked for a big company, but I also enjoy working for smaller and medium organizations to help them with their sales. And I've been very fortunate enough to have a book published about my sales methodology and ideology, let's call it. Rob.
Yeah, cool. Nice one. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I mean, you might still find Steve driving around to find a phone box, put 2p's in, but that's probably for another day. But yeah, my name's Rob Taylor. I'm aware some of you on this call joined us yesterday, so I won't bore you for too long for that. But for the benefit of those that weren't on that call, yeah, I've been working in marketing, traditional in a marketing sense, for 15, 16 years now. Like Steve was working before the internet, I was working in marketing before social media, which is in itself a sort of digital revolution or part of the digital revolution. So I've got a real breadth of experience from direct mail, what we used to be doing, stuffing envelopes to send out to people from the clubs that I was working in. And then the evolution of social media shook all that up. I thought it won't stick around very long. And then lo and behold, 13 years later, it's now the dominant force in what we're doing. That presents so many opportunities for business owners, for salespeople, for sales teams. And I'm trying to help businesses through working with Steve, change that perception and hesitance of really embracing the opportunities that digital brings. You might know me from the O114 marketing brand. That is my local marketing brand. But the Plan, Grow, Do approach really brings together mine and Steve's joint efforts, because we share an office usually, not right now, we're quite separate. But it really brings together a lot of the similar conversations that we were having, just from a different frame. Steve was talking about it from a sales perspective, myself from a marketing perspective, but really we were having the same conversation. So Plan, Grow, Do has been born from that, and it's really helping businesses, small, medium and large, adapt to a changed environment. So yeah, hopefully you'll get a lot of good stuff out of it today.
Cool. So Rob mentioned about businesses we work with, and again, we only show this slide. So those of you that are part of businesses that has sales teams, those of you that have big brands behind you might recognize our training as being relevant. But those of you that are solopreneurs in businesses on your own, equally, Plan, Grow, Do and our methodology is applicable to you. And just to underline the part that Rob is saying here about sales and marketing, one of the components of a modern sales approach is that a seller and a marketeer are almost just different sides of the same coin these days. And the work that you do needs to be absolutely connected and consistent with one another. And we'll come on to the importance of that as we introduce to you a tool and a method called the 4Ds. So when we bring that in, we'll really connect together the importance of your sales and your marketing activities absolutely being consistent, because that's the piece that your buyer is researching before they invite you to see them. So you see the brands we've worked with up here. There are others, and we're proud to have worked with those. But now let's move on to the meatier content of the webinar. So what we're going to cover here today is something that I always ask businesses that I work with. What would it mean to you if every sales call had the chance to achieve something meaningful? Now, that something meaningful doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make a sale. And I'll talk to you a little bit about why that's the fact in a moment. But it underlines the point beneath. In a world where it takes 5 to 12 contacts to make a sale, why are we so adamant that the first one might be lucky? So we're talking a little bit about that in this webinar. And the point that I underline and mention so often is, don't sell how you like to buy, sell how your buyer likes to buy. One of the pieces that a salesperson, a seller, a business owner falls into the trap is actually overlaying their preferences into their approaches, and that disconnects the buyers or their ideal clients. So these are the 3 things we're going to cover through the webinar. And with that, I'll move on, and I'll frame a little bit in more detail some of these points. So, what would it mean to you if every single sales call had the chance to achieve something significant or meaningful? At times, the pressure to make sales drives our behavior, right? And the belief that interest, or the belief that a positive piece of feedback gives you the right to ask for the order is misplaced. In a modern selling environment, we know that it takes 5 to 12 contacts to make a sale. Now, in traditional selling, that would probably be 5 to 12 visits. If you think about, physically meeting in a networking event, then maybe meeting in an office or in a coffee shop for a conversation. Maybe then you take around the proposal. Maybe then you talk about that in a negotiation, and you'd be having these physical steps in your sales process. Now, clearly, in a modern in a modern selling world with the age of digital and as Rob mentioned, social media, but digital more broadly, the journey starts much earlier. And you can look at that in the webinar of yesterday, but it takes what we call 5 to 12 contacts. And those contacts could be things like a blog. They could be things like a Facebook group. It could be things like LinkedIn. All of this is messaging that you are passing on to your ideal customers before they are ready to buy. So it's really important that you recognize your buyer's buying journey and are creating content that teaches them things and creating content that provides them insights through these touch points. So if we recognize that it takes 5 to 12 contacts to make a sale, why do we try to push a sale in the first attempt? It's doomed to failure, folks. It's doomed to failure. Now, I'm not saying we're not lucky in sales. Sometimes we are. That's ultimately because the buyer has a real emotional need, or the fact that the buyer has been involved in your content and your for much longer than you realize. But the assumption is that you're going to have to work people through your sales process and match their buying journey. So 5 to 12 contacts to make a sale is a key takeaway from this piece. Now, this up on the screen is a real example of a real conversation with a made-up name. So we have to be careful we don't revert back into the real name, which is why it's written up on the slide. But it's a real example that Rob received from a magazine, a publication, sales rep looking to sell advertising space in their publication. And it really is quite a baffling approach. It's a baffling approach for a number of reasons, because I wonder if your reflection to this is whether this would work for you or not. Right? Let's just go through some of the mistakes or missed opportunities, and Rob will come back to this as we go through. But hello, this is Jan. How can I help? Well, I'm from Sell Your Ads magazine. I have a fantastic offer for you. £1,800 for 6 months advertising in our mag. First response, I don't have a budget. Immediate reply, okay, is 600 any better for you? Let me find out about your business. And it's like, wait, you don't even know who I am. This very early approach to try to sell is doomed to fail. I haven't established as a seller that you want my product. I haven't established as a seller that you have a budget. I don't actually know what it is you do and the value and the insight and the problems I might solve for you, let alone the pricing and the discount offered is almost insulting. Now, I am not suggesting in any way this is your sales approach, but there are a number of bear traps in this example that you might fall into if you are reverting to a behavior of just trying to make a sale. The key here is that you would do far more prior to the call. You would at least do some research. You would probably engage with the individual on their digital content. You would perhaps even find ways to meet virtually, physically, however, in the real world, Rob, before you make this phone call. This is an approach that we've probably all experienced from call centers. Regretfully, that is still the most successful outreach sales approach that there is, which is why people still do it. But for us as businesses, wanting to have better sales outcomes every time we talk to customers. Let's remember that it's 5 to 12 contacts, and coming in with this kind of approach is doomed to fail. So let's just think about where it actually did go wrong. And I now need to change the slide. Boom, there we go. You know, Jan in this example was simply a number cruncher, you know, and this is a really terrible thing, that we often set people up just to make numbers, to make sales. We don't set them up to add insight, build relationships, and create that longer term partnership that perhaps our business needs as we nurture clients through our product ecosystem. You know, let me introduce to you here the 4D model. And the 4D model is the approach that we use in Plan, Grow, Do to effectively talk to our customers before they're ready to buy. Running through on the diagonal is our sales process, and that sales process is a 7-step sales process. It's called SpanCop. Those that follow my content will know that this is something that I've used even in Shell International when I helped design their sales program. It's a 7-step of the sales process that needs to match your buyer's buying journey. The bubbles are bigger because actually your funnel is bigger. Your sales funnel is bigger at this point, right? So you have more suspects, more prospects. You're then analyzing, you're negotiating, closing, order, and payment. They're the 7 phases of a traditional B2B sales process. But what we overlay in this are two elements, right? So one is that the customer's journey is broken down into 4 distinct phases, and those phases move through unaware, aware, decision, and loyalty. And you've got to recognize that your buyer's buying journey takes on these different stages. So clearly, just reading across and joining that up, when I am a suspect, i.e. my very beginning point of openly shopping for something, I'm unaware. I'm unaware of maybe the problems I have, the solutions that are out there, and who I'm going to buy from. That means that your communication in this phase needs to be far more general and broad. Yeah. As we move through the 4 phases, unaware, aware, consideration, decision, and to loyalty, which is the repeat customer part, and we showed that in the webinar yesterday, your communication gets far more specific. And we're going to show you an example of this in the next part of the webinar. So if we think about our communication needs to match our sales process and our buyer's buying journey, why do we need to do that? Well, we need to do that because of the 4 zones that we have. Our customers are in, you know, as we communicate, we're communicating in the 4 Ds: the diagnostic zone, the danger zone, the decision zone, and the dead zone. One of the challenges here is that we match our communication to the right place the buyer is in the buying journey, to the right point that the sales process is at, and their buying decision. Why do we do that? Well, we do that simply because in the example of Jan, and I hope my pointer's on the screen, Jan was reaching out to Rob at this S phase. Suspect. Didn't have a clue who Rob was purely just trying to make a sale. So Rob was a suspect. The communication was actually asking not just for an order, but for a payment. It was actually at this very top phase, the assumption of the seller was that Rob was in the decision zone. So the messages that Jan was passing on were all about make a decision, but Rob, as the buyer, was in the dead zone. He wasn't even in the marketplace. He wasn't even ultimately there to make a decision. So this was a really wasted opportunity by Jan on this sales call. There was so much more that Jan had to do in engaging with Rob at the diagnostic zone, when Rob might have been in that position or might have been open to making some kind of thought that he needed advertising. Let me get my content out into the market, so I'm out there for when you're ready to make a decision. And then when you engage with my content, I will start providing much more specific pieces as you move through the sales process. Okay, so the 4 Ds is a model that will help you tie up your sales process, your buyer's buying journey, with a model that helps you communicate more effectively with relevant content at the right times. You might have questions about that, and you can pop those in the chat box because we'll have a Q&A at the end of this. But to bring that to life even more, in a moment, Rob's going to run through an example that will help you create that content so you can recognize what that actually might look at. But before we just jump into that, let's talk about why it's important that we communicate in this way. Well, the stats tell us that I've already shared with you, it takes 5 to 12 contacts to make a sale. But out of those 5 to contacts, how many of them happen in a digital space? Well, 60% and more of buyers are millennials. It's a truth. And 90% of millennials, are active on digital platforms. So if you are not thinking about how your communication and about how your contacts are digital versus physical, you are likely missing out on an enormous marketplace. And what you're doing is, when you reach to your customers, you're acting like Jan, versus the example that Rob is going to show you very soon, where it's a much more logical and natural conversation than one that is much more forced and one that is not going to necessarily deliver success. So by missing potentially out on 50% of your marketplace seems to be something that you might want to avoid. Yeah, even if you manage to speak with the same buyer as your competitor in that physical or digital space, imagine how far you are behind if you haven't nurtured the relationship correctly using the 4 Ds model. That when we're moving into the right zone with the right content, they are more likely to buy. So don't sell how you like to buy, sell how your buyer likes to buy. Really important that you crack this piece. So Rob, I'm going to take a break now because I think I've framed that and you'll be all over the example, right?
Yeah, nice one. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, so it's a really clear example. It's an important piece of the plan grid training is the 4D model. It sort of ties together a lot of the work that comes before it. I hope it made sense to you, and I'm sure a lot of you on this call have either been party to it in the receiving end, or perhaps you have actually been Jan in that example. I don't know about you guys, but on March 23rd, when lockdown happened, pretty much my order book disappeared, my market disappeared, the market evaporated. It just went overnight. 100 and some days later, it's not particularly back flourishing yet, but there's signs that things are now starting to happen. I wrote an article about 3 things you can do when your market disappears over on the plangrowdo.com blog. And I'm referencing that a little bit, so you might want to go and read that shortly. But this past 100 days, if nothing else, it should have taught us there has to be a change in how we approach sales. Because if we are that person where Jan gets given a load of numbers, go and call, go and call, go and call, go and call. If for 100 days that's what they've been doing, they're going to have alienated pretty much their entire market. So when the market returns, they're not going to go with Jan. They're going to want to broadcast their message elsewhere with another provider. So this new approach is really vital for you to get to grips with, but also challenge yourself if you are struggling with this more modern approach, as we call it. Then think about it from your customer's perspective, and don't revert to type and think, right, we're just going to sell more, hit the hard sell more. Because if you hit the hard sell more, you just risk running into a brick wall. You've got to refer back to what was in the 5 anchors session, talking about the more modern way, which is meaningful relationships, building those relationships over a considered 5 to 12 touch point process. And I've got an example coming up, but I'll walk you through the customer journey first, where there are key stages before someone is a customer. That is, someone is unaware. For example, I am confident that some people on this call didn't have a clue who me or Steve were before this call. And that's fine, because it's our responsibility as business owners to position the brand, as it is your responsibility to position your brand in the space where you think your customers are. That doesn't mean every one of you is going to rush out and buy, and that's not why we're here. But it's important for us to position the brand, the messaging, the story, the ideology, the methodology, whatever you want to call it. What are you doing today that is going to talk to your potential best customers, just to make them aware of who you are? And then when someone's aware of you, how are you increasing those touch points with relevant bits of content? I'm going to walk you through an example shortly where it's a real life example. The lady worked in education. We wrote a specific piece of content for that one person. So if we understand that 70% of content never really gets seen by anyone, why are we writing blogs and articles and content in the first place? It has to be with a reader in mind. So don't just go writing blogs and assuming your floodgates of prospects are going to open. But if you can write it in with one customer in mind, yes, more people will read it, and that's great. But you've created an asset for that relationship, and that relationship only. So as someone becomes unaware to aware through to considered, it's then your opportunity to really build that trust, work on a win-win partnership. Not a case of, will you buy my ads? Will you buy my widgets? Will you buy this? It's a needs-based relationship. The customer at the center of that, to understand what it is that they actually need and how you can solve that problem that's best for them. And then we get to the decision phase where it's yay or nay. There are things you can do there as well. So Steve, could you flick on? I'll just show the next example there. So we talk a lot about a joined up approach and a modern approach, and a lot of traditional sellers will focus on offline activity. They're finding the phone box, the opening up the briefcase, here's all my flyers, here's a catalogue, what do you want? And oftentimes the buyer doesn't know what they want. Yes, they're more informed, but they're looking for you to guide that for them, not just receive a huge catalogue of products and say, let me know when you're ready and we'll sort you out. So that's the offline side, and a lot of people get stuck in that. Whereas I'm sure a lot of you are realizing now there is a whole online world, and this doesn't just mean social media. Online doesn't mean social, online means digital. And that's your whole digital footprint, your whole digital presence. What is that? How can that support your offline activity? And how can the offline activity support the online activity? So it's not two columns of separate journeys. It is a joined up approach: online, offline, offline, online. So I'm going to walk you through. I'm just conscious of time slightly, so we'll walk you through this example about how we connected with this lady in education, where we knew that we had a product, the Plan, Grow, Do trading product. It would have been suitable for a growing sales team, a B2B growing sales team based in education. We knew that that was perfect for us. So through our own exercises, because we like to practice what we preach, we identified our best customers. We figured out who it was. We knew a list of people who that would be, and we cherry picked 2 or 3 of them. We thought, okay, if we just drop a brochure in front of them, they're not going to care. So, because they don't know who we are. So how can we, in step 1, the primary goal is to simply make them aware of who we are. So in an online world, we use our targeted networking plan, not just sporadic networking, hoping they'll show up. We take a step back, put ourselves in the customer's shoes. If we were this buyer, where is it likely that we are going to network? Let's show up there. Because a lot of time, I'm sure we've all been guilty of it, we just network for networking's sake. And we just think that networking will work because we're just turning up in rooms or Zooms, whatever it is. And then lo and behold, nothing happens from it. Networking can be a great asset, but it's got to be targeted. So this is what we did. We targeted the networking. In support of that, online, remember, how can online support offline? We put value-adding content out, best practice of the industry, webinars, targeted connections. So if we know that someone is going to that event because we got the registration list from the provider, ahead of that, we will connect on LinkedIn saying, oh, I notice you're going to XYZ networking. It'd be great to get to know you because I think we've got a lot of synergy in what we do. And just leave it at that. Because then before you've even got to networking, some people could find it awkward communicating in a room with strangers. If you have used your online functionality to break the ice before you walk in the room, it feels like you know that person already. I've had this many, many times where I go to sessions with my O114 marketing hat on. People have walked in and said, oh, it's you. I know you. And they feel familiar. So already the ice has been broken because I've worked so hard on the online side to build a reputation with people who I don't know, but to make them aware of who I am. Which brings us on to the next slide there, Steve. So we've done our networking session. We met the lady in education. Nice one. Brilliant. Now what do we do? Do you ever just leave networking events and follow up, what, 3, 5, a week, 7 days later? Do you not follow up at all? After every networking event that I go to, it is structured with anyone that I feel I can help and there is benefit to getting to know better. I'll follow up immediately within the hour of leaving that session. And I think that's what you need to do as well. That looks like a LinkedIn connection to get them in what I call the holding pattern. So you're building your suspect pool, which is the biggest circle on the 4Ds model that Steve explained. Just get them into the connection. I'll private message them if I feel it's suitable and say, great to meet you. I'll remember something they talked about and said, oh, good luck with this. I hope it works out for you. And that's it. Assess the needs if possible, and then start liking, commenting, just showing up in their spaces. If it's relevant and they're sharing content that you can help and you can share to your network that might help them, do that. Remember, you're not talking about yourself here. You're helping them. You're showing them the benefit of you. And then maybe once they're aware of you in an offline space, you can perhaps arrange a one-to-one in a more traditional sense to explore that relationship and just to get to know each other. Time goes by, and in the consideration phase, bear in mind now, this could be a week's time, it could be 6 weeks' time, it could be 6 months' time, it might be the lockdown time, people just getting to know each other online. As that market starts to emerge, people now, the lady in education, she's starting to think, I've got a problem that I need a solution for. My sales team need mobilizing. And because we've spent the past however many weeks, however many touch points, however many pieces of content, building a meaningful relationship, if now This lady comes out and says, right, I need to go out to tender, for example. I'm going to get 3 providers. I'm going to ask them, and the chances of it being us is higher now, because she's not going to Google. She's not looking on LinkedIn particularly for sales businesses. She's like, I know someone. I know a couple of guys in Sheffield who do sales training. I'll give them a nudge. Why? Because we've not rammed it down her throat that she needs it now. We've positioned ourselves, we've added value, and now she's considering it. She knows what her problem is. So online, this is where we can start to say, okay, we know what your problem is because you've told us. Here's a case study about how we've helped other people in your exact same position. Here's reviews from a similar industry. Here's reviews from a similar customer. This person had the exact same problem as you. So you're not saying buy now, you're saying here's how we've helped other people just like you. And to support that in an offline space, now might be the time that you send your brochures just to say, here it is for your attention, let me know when you're ready, because you've assessed the needs before. At the decision phase, yes, great. If it's a good contract, take some time to nurture that relationship. Face-to-face, phone calls, the traditional stuff still works. We're not saying ditch the offline activity, but what we're saying is the online activity helps you become much more efficient in creating the 5 to 12 touch point. Very briefly here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 touch points there when you combine the online to the offline. There's supporting material based on the needs of the prospect. I'm building the know, like, trust online, building a relationship off the feeds. The feeds is for general suspect and prospecting. But now, because there's trust built, the LinkedIn Messenger, for example, it's just like the modern phone call. We use the phone fine, but then sometimes there's hesitance in using LinkedIn Messenger. Take that relationship private when the time is right and you know they're at the decision phase. So finally, the existing customer there, because I think a lot of us can sometimes forget our existing customers. I think we often chase just new and exciting shiny toys, and we should just look after the ones we've got. So how can you use your online assets, your blogs, your Zoom, for example, automated support? What does that look like for you? And how are you supporting that in an offline space? Are you championing your customers online? Are you saying, look how great this customer is, because you've got a similar network to them, to help them win referrals? It's just going to embed trust, embed the like of you, and it's going to build that meaningful relationship. But more importantly on that as well, regular and diarized catch-up. But vitally is feedback. Remember, I might have mentioned yesterday that reviews leave clues. What feedback are they giving you? And are they buying what you've actually sold? Because they might say to you, I really like you because of this, and this is why we bought you. It might be something that you don't even think existed. And because you built that much trust up and conversation, you can have an honest conversation. People love to give feedback and help and guide others. So use the online, offline model here in your business to, this week, challenge yourself to think, okay, who do I want to make aware? How can I do that? Who doesn't know who I am, who I really want to know who I am? And then how can you use this table, which is it's available for downloading the ebook that we'll post a link in the chat to. But it's a really simple yet effective exercise that I think Steve's going to round off on the application of that. Aren't you, Steve?
Yeah, nice one. So, I mean, that definitely brings that to life. Well done, Rob, because, models and theories are all well and good, but seeing it in real life, I think is the right way to do it. So, just to summarize, 2 elements I just want to share here. There are 4 stages in your customers' awareness, unaware, aware, consideration, decision. Before they become an existing customer, then you move into the 5th, which is loyalty. But importantly, there are 4 zones in how you want to communicate. Your job as a seller is to communicate to them in the right zone and be aware if you're communicating in the dead zone or the danger zone. And this is when you generally spray or pray content, the danger zone, just content. And the dead zone is when you try and sell too early. So remember, you are trying to guide all of your communication through the diagnostic zone up to the decision zone. And you only do that by recognizing the buyer's buying journey and matching your sales process to that communication. And here we show that through our sales process that's called SpanCop. So really important, avoid spray and pray, because that's the danger zone, and avoid sales messaging, because that's the dead zone. Keeping customers engaged through their buying journey, you'll do that by providing content that is relevant to where they are. And the second point, just to re-emphasize, the opportunity to create this, nurturing customers in the holding pattern, as Rob described it, really only works in a modern selling way if you are managing that online and offline. So thinking about your message, thinking about your online and offline message, and thinking about the platform, the digital platform that you're using, is really important. And you match that to your buyer's preferences and your buyer's buying journey. If your buyer isn't on LinkedIn, it doesn't matter how much of a rock star you are on LinkedIn, they're not going to see you. So it's really important that you tie up and match all of these things together. So we've covered quite a lot of ground in the 40 minutes we've been on so far. Hopefully there are some questions that you've got in your mind, or you've put them in that chat thingy-majiggy. Technical term there, by the way. But what we've covered in this webinar, what it means to you if every single sales call has the chance to achieve something meaningful. We've shown you how you can move things on step by step and incrementally create something meaningful. In a world where it takes 5 to 12 contacts, we've shown you why you shouldn't be trying to sell too early. And we've tried to show you how to appreciate that you don't sell how you like to buy, but sell how your buyers like to buy. These things are really, really important. Just to wrap it, we're in that question slide. There is a limited time offer on our Plan, Grow, Do training online. Just wanted to emphasize that on the Chamber website, there is a online live training offer. On the 13th, 14th and 15th of July, we're delivering Plan, Grow, Do training on those mornings, which you can go and have a look at that Chamber website. Rob's going to put a few tags in the feed in the chat for you, so you can download the free brochure. And I think that's what we're going to do. Yeah. Sam, I think it's over to you, my friend.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Rob. Fantastic. Yeah, just want to say a big thanks for giving up your time, gents, today and yesterday. Both really, really useful, interesting sessions. I think we've got a couple of questions. Not sure. Let me just double check.
Yeah, there's one from Rebecca Dodd there.
Yeah, so Rebecca says, we have had a customer that was at the decision stage and about to move forward in buying our product just before lockdown. We now feel like we have moved back to aware and can't seem to get them make a decision. Any advice? I suspect there'll be quite a few people in a similar situation.
I mean, it's a magic point, right? Because it's probably happened to, as you said there, Sam, everybody. And Rob, it might, if you can pop in the holding pattern blog into the link. We addressed this, Rebecca, in a blog about the holding pattern, because how to simplify, you used to have an average sales cycle, right? You used to have an average time-ish that a customer would buy, and you would recognize what that is, and your sales process would be matching that, and your habits would form into that. But what's happened, particularly in lockdown, is the sales cycle has changed. And the key for you as a seller is to recognize, has that changed because the motivation's changed, the needs have changed, right? So you were likely selling something to somebody and you were providing a solution. What might have happened now is the problem is different. It might be that actually the problem in the business is now cash flow, and it isn't creating the outcome that your solution was providing. So reconnect with the decision maker to make sure that the problem that you were solving is still the problem that needs to be solved. Don't assume it stayed the same. The second part is don't assume that the decision maker is the same, because what's happened in lots of businesses is that decision tree has collapsed. And actually, where I was empowered to sign something off before, now it's going to the owner, because cash is slightly different. So two things: check that the problem you're solving is still the same problem, and check that the decision maker is still able to make that decision and it hasn't changed. They will be the first two places that I would look at.
Thanks, Steve. Hopefully that answers your question, Rebecca. Just got another minute or two if anybody wants to pop any questions or comments to Steve or Rob. I'd just like to give that training a bit of a plug. We sent all our sales team on to the Plan, Grow, Do training. So do check it out. Obviously, it's great training. See, Rob shared some useful links. I think we'll probably wrap it up there unless anyone's got any burning questions. Rob, Steve, do you want to add anything?
No, I mean, we always just say connect with us on LinkedIn. We share all our articles that support this on there. So please do connect. You'll find me. I think it's Rob Taylor. I think I'm Rob Taylor, not Robert Taylor, on LinkedIn. So if we're not connected, I think we are connected to a few people here. I'll drop my link in now to the chat. But yeah, I'll continually post the supporting content on there. So yeah, please do connect. And yeah, good luck with everything.
Yeah, nice one. And if anybody fancies jumping on LinkedIn and telling everybody that this was a valuable experience, that's where our customers' buying journey begins. Remember we showed you that example, that unaware phase, aware phase, that's where our buyers buy. So if anybody feels that they wanted to be, generous in their feedback, that's where our buyers begin their buying journey. So that will be very grateful to receive. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, yeah, thanks, gents. Really appreciate it. Really helpful. Just a quick plug from the chamber to people that are still on the call. Just an event we're running tomorrow. I don't know if anybody's seen the launch of the Make Yourself at Home campaign, the new citywide campaign being run by Sheffield City Council. It's part of the economic response to coronavirus, and there's opportunities for all businesses across the city to get involved. So we're running just a dead short webinar tomorrow morning with Mark Mobbs, the marketing manager at Sheffield City Council, just to inform businesses about the campaign and explain how they can get involved. And it would be great to see as many of you on that call as possible. It's on the website, on the chamber event calendar, so you can just jump on and register online. Thanks again to Rob and Steve. Really appreciate your time last couple of days. Really useful. I hope everybody.
Thank you. It's been great. Yeah, and I'd make sure you grab that ebook as well. I've posted the link to it. It's free. It just supports what the webinar's been about. So the link's in the chat.
I'll just leave the call on them for a couple of minutes while people want to download those links. So thanks a lot, guys. Take care and see you at future events.
Nice one. Cheers, Sam. Thank you all.